What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Dynasty Gambit's first 2026 Startup Mock Draft. And we're joined by a couple of special guests. Should be a good time. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome to the Dynasty Gambit. We've got an old friend, Mr. Ben McCown, Benny Knows Ball, co-founder of the Dynasty Gambit, back joining us after a hiatus. Welcome in. And then, of course, Dustin from Devi Dojo. Welcome in. Good to have you recapping a mock that we all did together. Should be a good time. So we're going to hop right in and kind of talk about it. But first, you guys want to tell us what you've been doing the last few months? I know you guys have been working on a rookie guide. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, of course, Dustin, Chris, and I from the dojo have been working hard at the rookie guide that we prepared for the NFL draft. So I believe the first release will release on March 9th. And we're extremely excited to put it out. We've been putting a lot of hard work into it, and this is a really fun class. I think what I learned from the experience was just that these rookies, a lot of people are downplaying this class, but there's a lot of depth at each of the positions, especially wide receiver, to look into.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it all turns out.
Yeah, same thing as Benny, man. It's like just countless hours in the film room, which is therapeutic for me and what I enjoy doing anyways. So it's been a lot of fun just delving so deep into this class. And then of course at the Devi Dojo, we're always looking at the next classes. So it keeps me plenty busy. Like last night I was looking at Carson Beck. I'm forced to watch his all 22 because I'm doing his profile. And I found myself watching Malachi Tony out there just dominate as a 17-year-old true freshman for a period of time there. Man, I fell in love all over again. So I'm having fun doing this. We're putting a lot of work in behind the scenes, and we're very excited to release it to everybody.
Work you guys are putting in. Ben, since my Wi-Fi is kind of going in and out, do you want to kind of lead reading through the picks, and I'll just talk when it comes to my picks as we go?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
All right, let's do that then. All right, let's jump into the draft. We did a 1 point? I believe we did a 0.75 tight end premium, 6 passing touchdown. So it was a fun exercise, and we'll kind of go through the rounds, talk about each of our picks, and see how it all turned out.
Yeah. So at the 1-1, Jose ended up leading us off with Bijan Robinson. We got Puka Nacua at 1-2, Josh Allen at 1-3, Jamar Chase at 1-4. And I decided to take JSN at the 1-5. And Dustin and I were talking about this pre-show. At one point through the 25 season, JSN was over 4 yards per route run, which was an insane stat. We actually looked up Jamar Chase in 2024 the year prior, and he had 2.41 yards per route run. So he was just at a historic clip, just killing it last year in his efficiency. And he ended up being the wide receiver 1 in the NFL, of course, leading in receiving yards. Ended up in most leagues as the wide receiver 2 behind Puka Nacua in points scored. But to me, JSN feels safe now at this point, right? I think a lot of people had taken JSN in his rookie season, whether you drafted him in a startup or in a rookie draft. And maybe we're a little disappointed, or maybe we're a little bit let down. But I think, and I'm not worried about Clint Kubiak leaving. I think they're going to step in and make sure that JSN stays the alpha in that offense. And I think Sam Darnold has been good enough for JSN. And in fact, for any Sam Darnold believers, has been great for JSN. So I liked at the 1.5, especially we're running 3 wide receiver in this league. So, or in this startup. So I thought that was kind of the advantageous pick to take there. We ended up taking the next pick was Jahmyr Gibbs at the 1-6, Drake May at 1-7, which I think that's something to talk about right there. This draft was done right after the Super Bowl. And so I think there were a lot of people disappointed in what they saw from Drake May in his performance. I think he's probably going to bounce back, especially in startups that you're going to see in the offseason. Definitely above 1-7. Jaden Daniels at the 1-8, Matty J at the 1-9, and Austin, you took Lamar Jackson at the 1-10.
I like that value there. I mean, he's coming off a rough season with the injury and obviously not living up to the 101, 102 expectations that he had coming into the season. But I mean, he's a 2-time MVP. We've seen him finish in the top 5 time and time again in fantasy football. And I still think, as a 6-point passing touchdown league, you have a guy, you think about Lamar as a rushing upside guy, but he's a guy who threw 40 touchdowns just 2 seasons ago. So being able to get him at the end of the first, in a 6-point passing touchdown, I think is good value. So I was happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that was a theme throughout this draft. You kind of saw the quarterbacks being taken later than you typically would see in a startup, right? Especially with the 6-point passing touchdown. I think traditionally you see in this type of format, quarterbacks come off the board within the first 5-6 picks with maybe your Jamar Chase or whatever wide receiver or tier 1 wide receiver you wanted to pick from there. And not only in this first round, but I think it kind of carried through. And that's some new game theory that I've seen a lot of people talking about in both of our discords is, do you take a quarterback early, or would you rather supplement your team with all these other positions of value and then get your quarterback like a Bo Nix or a Tyler Shuck in the later rounds? So it definitely opens up the door for a lot of good discussion surrounding that.
Yeah, I agree, Dustin. And for some of the same reasons that I took JSN, I think that's a big reason why people might go wide receiver in the first round when you have to start 3 versus being able to start 2 quarterbacks, right? And you just see so much of the value fall down in the draft when you could take, like you said, Bo Nix, Brock Purdy in the 3rd round. I mean, Justin Herbert, the fact that he's at 3-6 there, great value for Rocco. But yeah, I mean, that was a great pick there, Austin. I think Lamar Jackson is still going to be worth his value at 110. CeeDee Lamb goes at the 111. And then Dustin, you took back-to-back Caleb Williams and Jeremiah Love. Talk about your picks a little bit there and what you decided to take with a little bit of your game theory there.
Yeah, I was just seeing a pretty good run on the wide receivers that I would have had over him. And then I think that Caleb Williams tied to the Ben Johnson system there. Like anytime I can get a quarterback that I believe in tied to an offensive system that I think is going to be conducive for those fantasy points, then I'm all in. They've done nothing but surrounded this kid with talent around him. So if I could get him on the back end and then immediately get Jeremiah Love at 2-1, who, I mean, this was done a little early. This was done pre NFL Combine. And again, we don't know landing spots, so there's always some volatility with picks like this. But I consider Jeremiah Love on the same level of Bijan Robinson as a prospect, maybe slightly down if you're doing official rankings, but he's in that same type of tier as a prospect for me. And you saw it at 6 foot, 215 pounds. This dude is running the same type of speed as Devon Achane out there. Jahmyr Gibbs, like he is very, very fast, explosive. He can run with physicality. And I don't think it's going to take very much for the fantasy community to vault him up to that running back 3-4 area. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where he's already being valued by very many people. I obviously value him very high. I had plenty of options here at 2-1. I could have gotten one of those wide receivers, maybe a Malik Neighbors or a Justin Jefferson, which I definitely considered it. But when I look at the potential range of outcomes for a back of Jeremiah Love's stature, he doesn't only have the potential to rush for over 1,000 yards and 10, 12 touchdowns, but he could be like your Bijan Robinson out there catching passes. So that's where that was kind of like my reasoning behind that is I figured I could lock up a potential RB1 at that position right now. And I wouldn't be surprised that if he hits his rookie season where you would begin to see him like a Bijan Robinson last year, where he was around the 108, 109 in Dynasty startups.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let me hear some of your thoughts on this, Dustin, because I think there's another argument that comes in when you have Jeremiah Love and then 4 picks later, Ashton Genty gets picked, right? And I think we talked about it before. But Jeremiah Love as a prospect is probably ahead of Ashton Genty coming out of Boise State. But then, of course, you take Ashton Genty as the NFL prospect and what he gave you in his rookie season. I think I'm good with taking Ashton Genty as my RB3 and Jeremiah Love as the RB4, but they're right there.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. Like Genty already gives you the known, I believe, almost 1,000 yards after contact behind one of the most porous offensive lines in the NFL. So I mean, he's already shown you that you can do it. I think with a pick like this, rookie fever is definitely hit, that kind of baked into it a little bit. But it's the projection of where I believe they can be in terms of their talent and how that's relative to the fantasy production that you can get. And what I mean by that, Benny, is I don't think that Genty has the same receiving upside that a Jeremiah Love does. And that's simply what it boils down to. I play in all PPR leagues, a lot of with some additional points for running backs for carries. So if I can get a running back that also still gets me those PPR points, man, I mean that's what I'm gonna roll with. But I wouldn't fault anybody for having Genty over him too. Like he said, they're very, very close.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty happy. Actually, so I had a Genty share sometime last year, and ended up like orphaning that league because just I was cutting down, just doing a good amount of leagues. I was like, I need to just lock in, man. And I think you and I were talking about that during the off season, right? Or like towards the end of the season. But I ended up in a startup recently taking Genty and Love back to back at 112 and 2-1. And now in this league, the point per carry is at 0.25. So if you're got 300 carries, you got 75 extra points on the season. So I think in that situation, I felt pretty confident still taking 2 running backs and punting the other positions later. But for me, Jeremiah Love, what's the likelihood that he ends up in a similar situation or worse than Genty? It's very unlikely because the Raiders honestly had one of the worst running back and ecosystems that he could have gone into with just such a bad offensive line and just a bad team, right? Like you have to imagine if Jeremiah Love goes to Kansas City Chiefs, the Saints, or the Commanders, and he's automatically going to be entering in a great situation, much better than what Genty did his rookie season.
Yeah, perfectly said.
So as far as the next picks, okay, yeah. So Austin's having some internet issues, but I'll just keep going with this. We got Jalen Hurts at the 2-2, Joe Burrow at the 2-3, and knowing Austin, he was pretty excited there to take 2 quarterbacks in a super flex league back to back, especially Joe Burrow, where it's like that's first round talent that you're getting at the beginning of the second round, and it's based off of his recovery from injury. And of course, age plays a little bit of a factor there with him being, I want to say he's 29. But yeah, so 29 years old. And, to me, I think he's still going to be balling at a top 5 quarter level, the QB position for the next 4 to 5 years, personally. Then you end up going Malik Neighbors at the 2-4, Ashton Genty at the 2-5, Justin Jefferson at 2-6, Jackson Dart at the 2-7. And I was extremely excited in a 0.75 tight end premium to land Trey McBride at the 2-8. Especially, yeah, you see back-to-back there, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers at the 2-8, 2-9. To me, Trey McBride is a first-round talent in startups when it comes to any form of tight end premium. And then he's basically performing like a wide receiver 1 every week for the Cardinals. And we're going to see what happens in Arizona, right? I mean, the likelihood is Kyler's career in Arizona is done. Likelihood. They're probably not trotting Jacoby Brissett out there. So we'll see what happens, whether it's Malik Willis. I find it very hard to believe in division that the 49ers would trade Mac Jones to the Cardinals, but they're getting Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But to me, Trey McBride is still the tight end 1. And in this format, I think that's got to be the pick there. You end up getting Brock Bowers at the 2-9, Drake London at 2-10, Trevor Lawrence at 211, George Pickens at 212. So Dustin, let's kind of take a second and just go over these 2 rounds and just kind of talk about some of the best values and kind of some areas where maybe you would have preferred to take a different pick out of some of the guys. Let's just talk about the good, honestly. Where did you feel like the values that these guys were getting? What did you like the most?
That this would be the value round. You have Joe Burrow there, 29 injury discount. Neighbors, you get that injury discount as well. But where I really honed in right here was Jackson Dart over Trevor Lawrence. Now I get the upside with Jackson Dart, right? But he just lost Brian Daboll, who we know he was very comfortable with. Now you're going to get a guy like John Harbaugh in there. I think you're going to see a more old school traditional approach out of them where they're going to have 2 backs where it's a lot of run, more under center action. So I do have slight concerns for Dart putting up numbers that would warrant this pick right here. Even though I really like the talent, I really like him. But just a few picks later, you're getting a guy in Trevor Lawrence, who now we've seen what he's been able to do with that new coaching staff. He's finally taken that leap of what you thought he could be. And I think it goes back to like my theory on your first impressions. Your first impression in Dynasty absolutely matters for your value going forward. Jackson Dart came out and he crushed it immediately. So therefore, now he's vaulted up here. Trevor Lawrence, he kind of had to bake for a while after being the prince who was promised. So I kind of understand the hesitation for drafters, but in a lot of startups, my outlook is always to try to win as close now as I can. And so I think that the value of having a guy like Trevor Lawrence right here is just incredible. And then right after that, you have George Pickens coming off a tremendous year. It's looking like I think he's still going to be a Cowboy. I'd love to get the Cowboys fan opinion on that, but I mean, if he stays there in Dallas, if he stays there in Dallas, Benny, I think that his like this is the definition of a steal. He's finally put it all together of what we thought he could be. So, what are your thoughts there on Pickens?
Yeah, so let's see. I believe he finished off. Okay, so depending on the scoring setting, wide receiver 4, um, or yeah, in full PPR, wide receiver 5. At one point, he was the wide receiver 3 in 2025. And of course, a lot of people say that was without CD Lamb, but when CD Lamb came back, I mean, let's take a look at the numbers again. He ended up still getting, double digit targets even after. Okay, so I think CD Lamb ended up coming back like week 8. So you got 9 targets, 11 targets, 9, 13, 9, 6, 9, 5, 3. He was still a target monster on the Cowboys and ended up as the wide receiver 5 with CD Lamb in the offense. Everybody jokes about the even year Dak, but let's be serious. Like, they're going to be another, serious offense in 2026. And I could see 2 wide receiver 1s on that team if CD Lamb takes kind of that step back into the offense that he had the previous year in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. I am curious on your thoughts on Justin Jefferson at what 2.6 right there.
Yeah. So, and I do have to give credit to Rocco here. He's been really screaming out at the end of the season and at the beginning of the offseason that Justin Jefferson is one of the greatest values in dynasty football right now in terms of being able to get a wide receiver 1, like top 3, 4 wide receiver in the second round like that, because we know Justin Jefferson is who he is. We're going to see what happens with JJ McCarthy in the future going forward there. I think the leash is short. And, even me as a Michigan fan, I have to admit, right? Like, he had the tools in college, but like he just didn't have the proof on paper of what like Jaden Daniels, who played 5 seasons and started, for Arizona State and LSU, or Bo Nix, where it's like they had so much more experience and the tools that it translated to the next level. And so, I think Minnesota, if they're, going the next season or 2 and they don't have any confidence in JJ McCarthy, they're going to sign somebody. They got burned by letting Sam Darnold walk, and he won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks after winning what? I think it was like 27 regular season games in the last 2 seasons. They don't want to make that mistake again. or at least continue that mistake on if they notice that JJ McCarthy is not who they thought he was, and continue to let that be a problem. Justin Jefferson is going to be perfectly fine. And to get him at the 2-6 on your dynasty roster as your wide receiver 1, I was going to say for Rocco as well, he took Drake May at 1-7. And I think that was also a value in the sense that, like, why did we change our tune on Drake May when he had a rough playoffs? Well, everyone's going to point to the strength of schedule. And I'm sorry, I didn't realize that in the NFL, when you have, not as many weapons as what the New England Patriots could have possibly next year, plus they are going to be playing probably down more than what they did this year. That equals points to Drake May. You guys preach at the Debbie Dojo, trust your training. Like, we saw what we wanted to see from Drake May. We don't need to turn it around now after he had, a mid to poor performance in the playoffs. But yeah, so I think Rocco started the draft off great there with Drake May and Justin Jefferson. And Austin, while you're, we wanted to get your thoughts because, we were talking about George Pickens and how he ended up going to the 212 there. If he stays in Dallas is what, of course they have the franchise tag, but if everything still falls right, and I know he's trying to fight for an extension, what does his future look like if he stays in Dallas?
Yeah, first of all, sorry about the internet issues. I'm hoping this resolves that. I'm going to give it one more shot here. Pickens, I think, is in a good spot in Dallas. I mean, it's hard to say that he would be better off anywhere else. I mean, you might say, oh, he could be a 1 somewhere else, but we've kind of already seen that. He seems to thrive in the role that Dallas has him, right? So I think that we've seen him do well as a 2 and then step up as a 1 when Lamb was hurt. I do think that there's maybe a slight overvaluing of Pickens, just because I think people looked at his massive weeks when Lamb was hurt. I would not take him over Chris Olave or Nico Collins like he went in this draft. I think that's a little too high. But in that next tier, like with all these new rookies, with McMillan, with Rashee Rice, I think that he's a good pick. And I think that fantasy managers should be rooting for him to stay in Dallas. That's just my view. I think that that's a really good spot for him. Still think he'll be the 2 to Lamb, but I think that, the way that offense runs, there can be 2 top 8 fantasy receivers any given year in that offense.
Yeah, that's very much like what we were saying. And I was joking that we're, of course, Rocco is preying on the even year Dak, but it's going to be a good year in Dallas if everything falls as it should. And you guys should end up with 2 wide receiver 1s next year with, Dak for hopefully throwing almost 5,000 yards or more.
Yeah.
So, Dustin, this pick in the DMs has been a fun one because Colston Loveland at 3-1, he has been a historic riser this last, throughout the last season in 2025. Talk about the Michigan man, Colston Loveland, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure why it was so debated. Just not that long before we had Trey McBride and Brock Bowers go. I think that in a 0.75 tight end premium with a guy who's going to be attached again to Caleb Williams as his quarterback, to Ben Johnson as his play caller, I'm projecting that going forward because I remember in the middle of the season, all of the targets and all of the catches that he was getting. I believe over his last 5 games, he had 48 targets. And so I'm looking at that, and I understand progression isn't always linear. Maybe there's some other options that you could take, but I'm really banking on that upside here. Kind of my same logic there with Jeremiah Love, really the projection going forward. So I think all of those elements compounded together, combined, paint the picture of a guy that's going to be really freaking good in the NFL and really good at a position that traditionally we only have 4 or 5 high-end guys. Now, there have been recently a pretty good influx of tight ends, but out of all of that group last year, I think Colston Loveland was the one that was shining the brightest, simply because he wasn't just playing as your traditional tight end. He was being lined up out in the slot. He was doing and functioning more like a wide receiver. And I think it's important to remember that he was the 10th overall pick in last year's draft class. He was Ben Johnson's very first pick as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And you really saw, as some other people went out, when they moved his role and really got him going, how integral he was to the offense and just as a safety outlet to Caleb Williams at times. On those scramble plays, you got a guy like Caleb Williams who's going to be moving out of the pocket and trying to make magic happen. You need to have those receivers who are in sync with him. And I just saw Colston Loveland do that so many times that I said, I'm gonna plant my flag here as one of the next great tight ends in a really good offense.
Yeah. I think, I love Colston Loveland, what we saw in the playoffs. It's a little earlier than I would do it, but you're at the turn, so you have 24 picks before your next pick. Probably not going to make it back. Plus, you've already kind of made your bet with Caleb Williams. So you make that stack. If Caleb Williams thrives, Colston Loveland's probably going to thrive. So I don't have a problem with that pick at all.
Yeah, I think at this point, and it's interesting where some of the tight ends fell in this draft, because I think after Colston Loveland, they should have been taken earlier, essentially, right? Like you took seeing Colston Loveland at 3-1 is roughly where he's probably going in a 0.7 to 5 tight end premium to 1 tight end premium. But yeah, I mean, like you go down further, Tucker Kraft, Tyler Warren, Kyle Pitts, those guys lasting that late was definitely very interesting. But yeah, no, very good pick there, Dustin. I think when you're talking about just getting ahead of the curve and beating, some of these other values and just trying to look ahead in Dynasty, that's also another important thing that owners need to do as well. And kind of seeing 3 steps ahead, right? So I like the Loveland pick there. We got Devon Achane at 3-2. And then Austin, I talked a little bit about how you had to be loving that value on Joe Burrow at 2-3 to be able to get a first round quarterback at early second round. Had to have felt great. And then, of course, you backed it up with a third quarterback.
Yeah, this is not something I would normally do in a startup. I just felt like the value was just too good. It's Mahomes in the third round is honestly kind of sacrilegious. So to me, I actually think all 3 of these picks are extreme values. I know I didn't get a chance to talk much about those first 2, but I like Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow in a 6-point passing touchdown to me are probably my number 5 and number 6 overall players on my board. So to get them both at the turn is kind of a no-brainer. To me, I was thinking about tight ends, right? I think Bowers and McBride both went much later than they should have. But those 2 quarterbacks, I think, solidified my team, and I was not planning to go quarterback in the third, but Mahomes lasting to 303. He was the QB1 through 2/3 of last year. He looked like himself. It's just one of those situations where sometimes you just don't overthink it. I don't have to set a roster. I mean, this obviously is a mock, so I'm never going to have to set a roster. But even if this was a startup, I don't have to set a roster for 7 months. So just go ahead and plug him in. I think so. Yeah, 6-7 months. But go ahead and plug him in on the roster. I can trade any of them, right? Like if I get a great offer for Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, I can do that. I think there's a good chance that once Mahomes comes back from injury, all 3 of them are performing as top 5 or 6 quarterbacks, and the value will be, you will not be able to get Patrick Mahomes straight up for, Colston Loveland or Ted McMillan, the guys that go in that same range in a 6-point passing touchdown once you're in season. So I just thought like it was too good of a value to pass up.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I think I mentioned at the top just kind of how this draft went, and I believe even in the actual draft itself, you said you guys are going to force me to take Pat Mahomes here, man.
Yeah.
Like the value's just too good, and it's true. Like you're spitting right now, because in a 6-point passing TD league like this, these guys have tremendous value, and Mahomes is sneaky. Like he has sneaky usage with his legs as well. And you got Lamar Jackson up there at the top, and we know what he can do. So I have no issues with it. But then even further down this round, you continue to see that value at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
You got Bo Nix going to Benny there and Brock Purdy. Those are two very high end fantasy producers when they're healthy and when they're out there. So I mean,
Even Herbert 306.
yeah, Herbert as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So I really liked the value in here. I considered taking Mahomes at 3-1. I considered all those quarterback options, but kind of looking at the board and how it was playing out, I said, I want to try my hand at getting somebody a little later, and we'll see how it plays out. But I just cracked up at that, man. You guys are going to force me to take Pat Mahomes. Yeah, we kind of did. And of course, Austin's the smart one in the room, so he had to take it. Damn him. I thought maybe I could get Pat Mahomes to come back to me. Let's see how far he slides. It didn't happen.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have let it happen because we've been talking, and you're going to continue to hear me talk about it back and forth. Just, of course, Moneyball Nola there, Rocco, and I have been having some beef recently for him saying that Pat Mahomes does not belong at the end of the second round. He is not worth that, and I've fought back vehemently on that. Now I'm going to be showing up on Fourth and Fantasy here soon enough, and we're going to be talking Pat Mahomes and his injury. And that's going to be really, it's going to be really interesting because I'm going to test Rocco a little bit on that. But so we got Go ahead.
Can I say I agreed? Mahomes does not belong at the end of the second round. He belongs much earlier.
Oh, yes, I know where you're going with that, Austin. He should go much earlier,
right?
But yeah, no, we got Ted McMillan at the 304, Amarian Hampton at the 305, Justin Herbert to Rocco at the 306. Rashee Rice at 307, and I landed with Bo Nix at the 38. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but just the value of the quarterbacks. I mean, Bo Nix, QB7 on the year. He was having a monster year, especially with the comeback games and really being able to get himself in like great QB game scripts where, the Broncos were fighting to get wins, especially I think specifically of the New York. I know Dustin's going to be excited for me to talk about this game, but the New York Giants game where, we weren't sure if Dart was going to take the game or if it was going to be Bo Nix at the end. It ended up being Bo Nix's arm that took it. And to get that at the 3-8 as my QB1, I was able to punt quarterback for 2 rounds and got the wide receiver 1 I needed and Trey McBride at my tight end 1. So I really love the value there. And I think that Manders Mafia also got a good value at Brock Purdy at the 3-9. But Dustin, I mean, how did you let Bo Nix slide this far?
Because it was a mock draft done in February, and I seem to always take Bo Nix like right there. So I wanted to switch it up, right? Like that's the idea behind these things, is try new ideas. If I'm always doing the same thing every time, then I'm never going to grow, and we're never going to gain any more or any new information, I should say.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
I was pretty
absolutely.
bad.
And that's a great thing for you guys.
I was mad at you.
To know and do. What were you going to say?
I said I was mad at you, honestly. I said, dang, Benny, yeah, of course you took him. And then had to gloat in the chat. How did you guys let him fall to me?
Of course, we got smart man Austin over there taking Pat Mahomes at 3-3 and then me taking Bo Nix at 3-8. So Brock Purdy goes at the 3-9. We got Nico Collins at 3-10. Mekhi Lemon is second rookie off the board at 3-11. Chris Olave at the 3-12. We're just going to wrap it around here. Our third rookie taken, Carnell Tate, the wide receiver 2 in this draft, taken at 4-1. James Cook at 4-2. Jonathan Taylor at 4-3. Garrett Wilson 4-4. McConkey 4-5. And that was my pick. And I want to back up. Actually, let's talk about McConkey first, but I will back it up to talking about the rookies here in a second. So McConkey, he gets Mike McDaniel coming in this year now, right? He had a little bit of an off year last year at the beginning of the season, but really started to connect with Justin Herbert at the end of 2025. You can see there basically double-digit points for a good portion of the end of the year. I think Justin Herbert's injury did not help, the wrist injury. I think he's going to hopefully come back 100% next year. And Greg Roman was not working out in LA. So, which led to his firing. And now we get the next weirdest guy in the room behind Jim Harbaugh with Mike McDaniel in LA. And I think as my wide receiver 2 with Ladd McConkey at the 4-5, that was a great value. But it begs the question now. So Mekhi Lemon and Carnell Tate went basically half a round ahead of him. And, where do you guys see McConkey versus, the two rookies that were drafted there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they're kind of in the same tier. To me, the thing that stands out more is I think that the value on Nico Collins and Chris Olave is incredible, because those guys to me should be going right with George Pickens, if not before. So for them to go a whole round after, I think is crazy. But as far as comparing McConkey to like Lemon and Tate, even Tyson, I think he's right there. I think if McConkey was in this rookie class, would I take him 102? I don't know. I think McConkey is a safe bet. We know what he is. I think he's going to be solid. I might prefer the upside maybe of a Lemon or a Tate, but I really do think that McConkey is very solid, especially like on your team, you have already a dynamic wide receiver 1. He's just a very safe wide receiver 2 that you can slide in there every week. And I think that the fact that you got him almost a full like half round or like a full half round after Lemon and 5 picks after Tate is good value, because I would say that he's interchangeable with those guys as far as value is concerned.
Yeah, I don't really have any pushback on that either. I mean, Lad McConkey, we've already seen him do it right as a rookie, over 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. He had a yards per route run of 2.59 as a rookie. That's really impressive. And now you get a guy like Mike McDaniel now calling the offense. I think with him, he's going to be able to get his best players the ball and schemed open. So I'm really excited about that. And we have to remember, we saw the Chargers offense functioning at like half capacity at the end of the season. They had no offensive line. People were banged up. Justin Herbert was playing, all taped up on his hand. So I think that, like, to your point, it's great value on these guys with Olave, McConkey. I don't really understand it, but to answer your question, Benny, Mekhi Lemon, I probably personally would take him over Lad. That being said, just because I think I project him as being able to be a little more versatile than Lad. But of course, that's projection, right? And that's why I think if I was faced with the decision, I would probably still take Lad before him, even though my draft analysis of them as prospects would have Mekhi Lemon ahead. I've already seen Lad do it, right? So I would love to get him there.
Well, the other thing Lad doesn't have is Lemon's attitude, apparently, right?
Oh,
It's
God.
freaking draft stories, man.
Stop.
Insane. We just need to stop with this shit. Let's see here.
I don't even listen to that stuff. It's every year there's something new, some new rumors.
It's really silly, and I think some people were begging the point of like, some scouts and some teams are trying to do this just to drive these guys further down the board, so they hope they land them on their team. But let me ask you guys this though, because let's talk about the rookie to rookie, right? I got the question in our server today asking what it would take to go from the 102 to the 101. And I think my answer is purely justified here by saying it's going to take at least another first to put on top of the 102 to get to the 101. When you consider Mekhi Lemon here at the 311, and I think that's right where he needs to go, somewhere like late third, early fourth. And Jeremiah Love is probably not falling below the 2.5, 2.6 in most drafts. In startups. So I think it's gonna beg another 20, a 27 first, random 27 first, but that's the very least you need to be able to make that happen. And you can feel good knowing that Love is going to be on your team, being a staple of your running back room.
Yeah, I think I'd need another top 6 pick from this draft or a 27 first to move down from 101.
Any thoughts on that, Dustin?
No pushback, honestly. I agree completely.
Yeah, no, for sure. Really excited about Love. I think it's going to be really interesting to see where his landing spot is. We get Emeka Egbuka at the 4.6, AJ Brown at the 4.7, Jordan Tyson, the fourth rookie off the board there at 4.8, 4.9 T. Higgins, Travion Henderson at 4.10. Austin, tell us a little bit about Travion Henderson and kind of what made him your pick there at the 4.10.
Yeah, I was really planning, like my whole queue was wide receivers, but like all of them went right in front of me. I mean, I had T. Higgins and AJ Brown and Jordan Tyson, McConkey in there, so they all went right in front of me, and I didn't really want to go Rome Odunze or Brian Thomas or Marvin Harrison, which would have been the next three of my. I just think all of them have way too big of a risk and aren't really clear wide receiver ones. So I'm like, man, I'm just going to take best player available. That's what I've been doing this whole draft. So that to me is Travion Henderson. I think he's got a lot of upside. We saw in flashes last year, potential for him to be Jahmyr Gibbs like some of those games where he was breaking off multiple 60, 70-yard runs were really impressive. It's hard to figure out what Mike Vrabel's going to do with that offense. He loves Ramondre Stevenson, so I'm sure he'll continue to get a lot of work. But yeah, and I know Vrabel's not fully in control of it, but he has say over who's playing and who's not. So I still like Henderson. I think talent's going to win out. People were freaking out at the beginning of the year that he wasn't playing enough, and then boom, a couple big games, and all of a sudden, people are talking about him as running back, 4 or 5 in Dynasty. So I think that'll, even if he's inconsistent, there'll be sell windows to make a profit from the buying him at the end of the fourth here.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the pick. I think Travion Henderson is going to have. I think Ramondre Stevenson is there, like you said, Austin. But I do believe in the talent in Travion Henderson to take over that room. Time's just going to tell, honestly, with that system. But Ramondre Stevenson's not going anywhere.
Yeah. So I actually had essentially the same exact situation as you, Austin, where my queue was just being obliterated at this point. I'm like, well, damn, there goes a guy I wanted. There goes another one. But unlike you, I did decide to take the risk on Brian Thomas Jr., just kind of banking on the talent that we saw as a rookie. I've been playing long enough to know that when somebody shows you that they're good, that they usually are. And sometimes, situations happen. These second year players, oftentimes you'll see that little dip in production. So I'm going to take the discount on Brian Thomas Jr. and just bank on the upside. That was really my line of thinking there. And then I think it was about at this point where I go, oh man, this is a start 3 wide receiver format too. I probably should start getting some wide receivers here. So I made it easy. I went with the next guy in my rankings, which is Brian Thomas Jr. Then of course I flipped it over right there at the turn to Cam Ward, who is a guy that I'm really just, again, a lot of projection on my picks here. I wanted to go relatively young, maybe a productive struggle type of build. And I said, I got Brian Daboll going there with Cam Ward. Let's go. Like I that's what we've really needed from him. I think that we saw the spurts of him as a player. We didn't necessarily see that translate to fantasy. And so I'm really, really banking on that talent right there, combined with a better ecosystem for him to be successful and kind of design a scheme around his strengths and his skill set. And hopefully they continue to build around him. And we'll see. Maybe he's teammates with Jeremiah Love at the end of this. So, maybe I'll get another stack.
Yeah, no, I like the picks there, Dustin. Brian Thomas, man, I think to me, I see there's a future where he goes back to being a top 12 wide receiver again. I just think, you and I were talking at pre-show, he had the wrist injury, he had the ankle injury. And like you even said, one of his best friends died, Kyron Lacey, in college. That that's got to be tough on a person that he was close with teammates with Kyron Lacey and loses a friend and teammate, and then also is dealing with these injuries. I honestly am going to give a pass on Brian Thomas for that year, and I do think that he still has the potential to be up there again in kind of that next tier.
The thing that concerns me with Brian Thomas is just we haven't seen him really do it with Trevor Lawrence. He had all of his big games with Mac Jones. He just doesn't seem to be in sync with Lawrence. But it's hard to know where that breakdown is. They brought in Jacoby Myers, and he immediately, like day one, like he'd been in the facility for like 3 or 4 days, and he has a better connection with Lawrence. I don't really know what it is, the disconnect there. Hopefully they can figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how all that shakes out in Jacksonville. Of course, now you lose Travis Hunter to being part-time offense now. So we'll see kind of how that breaks down. But Jacoby Myers is pretty solid moving forward. We get Devonta Smith at the 5-2 after Euroballer took Chase Brown at the 4-11. We get Bucky Irving at 5-3. And Austin, you went back-to-back running back there. What are your thoughts about Bucky Irving at the 5th round?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good value here. I honestly haven't been the biggest Bucky truther. I just think that at this point, I don't like taking him over Chase Brown or James Cook, which I've seen people do. But at this point, he's kind of the end of a tier for me at running back. And so I liked, again, kind of the same thing as what I did with Henderson. I just don't really love the wide receivers in this range. And so I figured go ahead and lock down the 2 running backs. And as you'll see, I'm just going to almost best ball style, just throw bodies at the wide receiver position and hope there's some of them that end up working out. So it's a strategy I don't usually like to do because I don't like being weak at wide receiver, especially in a 3 wide receiver league. But I think as you'll see, I end up with a really good tight end as well. So quarterbacks, running backs, and tight ends are all kind of locked down. And then it's just like, well, if a couple of these upside plays at wide receiver hits, I'm going to love my team.
Yeah, definitely. So we end up getting Marvin Harrison at the 5-4. Love the value on Breece Hall at 5-5. Tucker Kraft 5-6. I think he's going to come back and hopefully have a strong 2026 year with Jordan Love. Rome Odunze at the 5-7, and I ended up taking Quinshon Judkins at the 5-8. And I think for me, the process behind that pick was he's kind of the end of the tier. Christian McCaffrey was right there at 5-9. McCaffrey definitely has the production, but I decided I wanted to keep it a little bit younger, and base my draft at that point on projection on Quinshon Judkins. I think Cleveland's going to build around the offensive line. Todd Monken's probably going to go heavy offensive line either in the draft or in free agency. They already have a trade right now with the Texans, I believe. Sending one of their offensive linemen there. Like they're going to start to build up the trenches. And I think Quinshon Judkins is going to be the beneficiary of that. Then you get Christian McCaffrey at 5-9, Cam Scatabo at 5-10, Dak Prescott, great value at 5-11, Tyler Shuck at 5-12, Kenneth Walker at the turn at 6-1, Jonah Coleman, and I believe that's the 5th rookie off the board there at 6-02. Then you have Fernando Mendoza at 6-3, Saquon Barkley at 6-4, and I took Jordan Love at 6-5. Jordan Love falling to the 6th round, that's a healthy regression. And honestly, I love the value there. Considering like we know that he's put up QB1 numbers in the past. And I think that Green Bay, they signed him to the long-term contract a year or 2 ago. I mean, it was only 3 seasons ago that he was a QB5. Again, there's not a large sample size of his success, but to get him in the 6th round to be able to lock up my QB at that point, to be able to get my running back 1 the round before, and of course my wide receiver 2 with Lad McConkey, I felt pretty good there taking Jordan Love. And then we got K-Tob at the 6-6 taking CJ Stroud, Luther Burden going at 6-7. We got Zay Flowers at the 6-8, Jared Goff at 6-9, and then Austin, you took Tyler Warren, an extreme value pick at the 6-10. I hate you for that.
So here's the thing is like when I'm looking at this, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, or in this case Monday morning tight end. But this is I agree that Loveland has passed Tyler Warren in value, but to me he's not almost 4 full rounds better. So to get Tyler Warren at the end of the 6th when Colson Loveland went 3-1. Now, part of that is I think Tyler Warren should have went probably in the 4th or 5th, but I couldn't pass this up. I honestly haven't been drafting really any of Loveland, Kraft, Warren, that tier of tight end, just because they tend to go too early for me. I'd rather have McBride or Bowers, or I'm going to wait and take Jake Ferguson, or even further down, take Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz type tight ends. But to me, going at the end of the 6th, Tyler Warren is just too good of a value to pass up. So again, kind of the story of my whole draft is just, this guy fell too far, so I'm going to take him.
Yeah, I don't know how that kept happening to you, man. Tyler Warren should not have been there.
Yeah.
Pat Mahomes shouldn't have been there. I remember just looking at your draft and going, man, every time I drafted this dude, he's so good. I get very angry, but in the best way, because I'm like, dang it, Austin did it again. But Ben, I actually had a question for you.
Yeah.
To start this round off, I believe we had Tyler Shuck taken.
Hmm.
I kind of
Yes.
wanted to just gauge your thoughts on Tyler Shuck as a prospect. Now, after how we ended the season, we kind of saw this meteoric rise in value for him. Some people would take him much higher than where he went. I really want to know your thoughts on him as a dynasty asset going forward. Are you a believer? Do any of the past injury concerns kind of scare you off? Where are you
Yeah.
at with Tyler Shuck?
So and if you guys have paid attention to any of my writing, and just the way that I like to cover injuries, I really like to take things from a history of that player standpoint. Tyler Shuck, if I'm not mistaken, Dustin, was actually around when Justin Herbert was at Oregon, right? He was the backup.
Yes.
And Tyler Shuck played, I believe, I want to say 6 to 7 years in college, ended up coming out into the NFL at 26, which is fine. I actually am not holding any of that against him. I actually think where he got drafted is perfect for where, when you look at, like, I'm looking beyond the rounds now, right? I think he got picked at a perfect spot at the 512, but the quarterbacks that got drafted ahead of him and behind him fell perfectly. I think he should be getting drafted ahead of Fernando Mendoza. He should be getting drafted ahead of Jordan Love. Should be getting drafted ahead of CJ Stroud and Jared Goff. And I think the reason for that is he showed he can do it with his arm, but then he adds the addition of being able to do it with his legs as well. And he was basically on the precipice of winning Rookie of the Year. And of course, Tedero McMillan ends up taking that. It was funny because Rocco was in the Discord and hinted up like, "Oh, guys, Tyler Shuck won Rookie of the Year." It was like, dude, that was the Pepsi Rookie of the Year award. But no, I think Tyler Shuck is an extremely exciting prospect to be excited about. And I think the issue that I have is I've been seeing him actually creep up into the 3rd round. And that to me is insane. That's not something that I want to do, where it's like he was taken ahead in that same startup mock that I was in, ahead of Purdy, basically behind Knicks. And it really should not be there. Like, he should be going around basically where Dak Prescott's going. Dak Prescott has the production and like the resume of being a QB1, but Tyler Shuck is much younger and has a lot of upside with his legs. I think he fell at the perfect spot. What about you, Austin?
See, I like Tyler Shuck a lot, and I think for a long time he was very undervalued, and so I liked where he was going. I'll be on record of disagreeing that he should go before Fernando Mendoza. I think it's just a process thing, right? I think the process of Tyler Shuck is, yeah, we've seen it, but I mean, Tyler Shuck is 5-11 or 6-10 season, 6-11 or 5-12 season away from not being a starter next year. Fernando Mendoza is going to be the number 1 pick. He's going to get 4 or 5 years. So I just think that Shuck is just so much riskier. We saw him have a really solid into the season, but 2027 is a great rookie class. And if the Saints are very mediocre again, I think they're going to draft another quarterback. Shuck was a kind of a bridge play for them. They didn't even want to start him at first. They went through the Spencer Rattler experience. And I think he's been a pleasant surprise. So I don't have a problem with him going around, the 5-6 turn. I think that's a fine spot for him. But I'm taking Mendoza. I'm taking Jared Goff. I'm taking Dak Prescott pretty easily over him. But I'm fine taking him over Jordan Love or CJ Stroud. And I think that's kind of the right range. But I will be on record saying I would prefer Mendoza. Not necessarily because I think Mendoza's clearly a better player than Shuck, but the NFL scouts think he is. The draft capital means everything. Being a number 1 overall pick versus being a 2nd round pick, I think just the job security is such a huge part of the dynasty value.
Yeah, that insulation definitely matters. I'm right there with you, Austin. And I'll be honest, the past injuries, they really do concern me. I saw this guy in college so many times just go down with whatever freak accident it was. So I mean, you never want to bake that too much into your analysis, but to your point, Austin, it's very volatile. It's very scary. It's a little too risky for me. But if I'm getting them here at 6, sure. If I already have some established quarterbacks on my roster and I'm taking a swing on my QB2, most likely QB3, then I love it here. But relying on him to be my quarterback one, I would have a lot of concerns with that, and I'd be very scared heading into the season.
Right, I agree. So I think my problem is more he's being valued like a guy who finished second in the voting, which he did. But I think he should be valued more like a veteran quarterback that you're banking on for 1 or 2 years. Because
Yeah, he's the
he's
same
already,
age.
what is he, 25, 26 years old? And he's in a kind of a volatile situation where this team is probably, I mean, they have so much. I believe they are over the cap. They're in a full rebuild. I just doubt that he's going to take this team to the playoffs. I mean, it is a weaker division, but it would not surprise me if he only has a year or two as the quarterback. So I think he should be viewed as in the same range as a Jared Goff or even a Matthew Stafford, where you're kind of like, this is a short-term bet. And honestly, those guys are more likely to put up better stats. So that's why, to
Yeah.
me, I'm fine with Shuck, but I in a narrower window, but don't be picking him as if he's, like he's Bo Nix or Cam Ward, where you're like, okay, these are young quarterbacks that are up and coming and are going to be around for a decade. I just think it could happen, but it's a bet I'm not willing to make.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think what scares me for Jose's team with that is what's great is he locked up his his 3 wide receivers at Bijan at the first 4 picks. But his QB1 is now Tyler Shuck. And later you see he ends up taking Malik Willis as his QB2. He most likely probably isn't starting a quarterback in his super flex spot unless we for sure know that Malik Willis gets a starting job, which could happen, but we don't know that yet. And so that's some of the risk that you take, where it's like if you had taken Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, Jackson Dart earlier in the draft, it's okay to have Tyler Shuck as your QB2, knowing if stuff goes sideways, you might have to pivot, and you're not counting on your QB1 being lost. It was your QB2, your super flex spot. So I do agree with you guys. I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I think there's a lot of people who think that, and I know 2 people in this draft who would say Tyler Shuck went too late in this draft, and I am just not there. But I think there's an argument to be had when it comes to that tier of quarterbacks that we're talking about. Again, Fernando Mendoza, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Jared Goff, and just which way do you want to go? Choose your own adventure on that, because to me, Tyler Shuck, it could be great. And then, like you guys are saying, with the injury history, with the lack of draft capital and what the Saints' future could be, it could all fall out. But at the same time, are you going to take the risk? And he's got some upside for the risk. So I don't mind the pick. But yeah, as far as team build so far, I don't like what Jose has going on at quarterback at the moment. So let's see here. Where did we leave off? I think we were on your pick at Tyler Warren.
Yeah. So I think we kind of discussed that, so we can go move into Dustin.
So we got Kyron Williams at the 6'11", and then Dustin back-to-back took Casey Concepcion and Josh Jacobs. So a rookie and a longtime vet.
Yeah, it's the rookie and the vet. So again, a lot of this draft has some projection in there, and in looking at the wide receivers that had been taken, I went with the guy that I know is likely to get first round draft capital. I believe he's going to be taken in the back of the first, so that puts him in range of like the 49ers or a team like that, a perennial playoff team that has a need at that position as well. So I think he's a play. Now, if he doesn't go to San Francisco, I still think that he has the skill set to win anywhere. And this was kind of like the projected rise in value. Even if I don't believe in Casey Concepcion, if he does get one of those bomb landing spots, then I can trade him. So that's really what I was thinking. Where can I get the most value from? Burden had been taken, Flowers. I'd probably take Concepcion over Flowers anyways, just in a vacuum. So I was really comfortable with taking him there. And then I backed it up with a veteran who I think is perennially underrated and undervalued in drafts based on his scoring and what he can give you. Now I know this last season was a little disappointing compared to what he had given you in the past, but he still put up really good numbers. And so I took an aging running back that I think is still going to be productive, that'll put points in my lineup, and that's as simple as it was for me. Also, I just love Josh Jacobs, I really do. Benny, I believe I got him from you in one of our leagues that we're in together. So I thought, where was it, 7-1? I thought that was a good
Yeah.
range to take him there. This is kind of where you start to see those older running backs come off the board.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the details of that trade. I know it was our 16 team league. It's the Hogwarts league, but it was a late first plus.
Yeah.
And I think for you're a contender. That made a lot of
Mhm.
sense to take Josh Jacobs. I'm doing a little anytime I take on an orphan, I try to take it through a rebuild, and I just try to make it my own and have fun with it. So no,
Yeah.
I like that pick there for you at 7-1. Casey Concepcion, especially like you said, a landing spot like San Francisco would be amazing for him. Like, right. Like I think, and I know you hate the comp of Debo Light, but there is a lot of hype around this guy. He was one of the guys that I did a rookie profile on, but just his ability with Yak and he's just got such smooth hands, and he ran really well at the combine. When you watch his tape, it's so good, man. You got to watch some highlights. You got to get into the all 22. It's a lot of fun with Casey Concepcion. So at 7-2, we have Kyle Pitts, just guy who had a resurgent 2025 season. And then Austin at 7-3, you took Jameson Williams.
Yeah, Jameson Williams is not a guy. I believe I have 0 shares of Jameson Williams. He's just so much of a boom bust player that I don't usually love to take him. But at this point, I think that he's kind of undervalued. I believe he finished somewhere in the top 15 of wide receivers last year, which kind of surprised me when I was looking at wide receiver 12. I would not have guessed that off the top of my head, but he had a lot of really big weeks. And to me, at this point, he's going to be my wide receiver 1, which I'm not loving, but it's still a 24-year-old with a great prospect profile in a great offense that has a high ceiling. And so to me, that's kind of the theme of the rest of my draft, is drafting young, high ceiling wide receivers, just to kind of hope that some of them will take off and hit and make the weaker part of my lineup, which will be wide receivers, a little bit stronger. But I do want to say one thing real quick about your Josh Jacobs pick, Dustin. I think that too many people that are doing, because it looks like you're pretty much doing a productive struggle here. Too many people think that you can't draft veterans in a productive struggle.
Yes.
At 7-1, you're getting a guy that in season you can trade for a mid-first plus. So it's
Exactly.
like that's great value there. I think too many people are scared of that and think they need to be tanking in February when they do the startup.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you see that a lot of times when people say, I'm doing a productive struggle. That means I can't draft anybody over the age of 24.
Right.
No, it's not true, for exactly the reasons that you outlined. So, and that was my line of thinking. So I think that was a great point to bring up to the audience.
Yeah, definitely. And actually going back to your pick, Austin, on Jameson Williams, as a Lions fan, I watch JMO basically week in and week out. And really where you started to see the reason why he ended up the wide receiver 12 was after John Morton had gotten play calling taken away from him, before the Washington game. JMO was absent. He wasn't there. He was looking awful. And honestly, in redraft, looking like one of the biggest bust picks, in drafts. And then as soon as Dan Campbell takes over play calling, I mean, you saw the stats there that were just pulled up. He had 23 points against Washington, came back some weeks later against Minnesota and had 26 points, and then had 26 points against the Rams. He was having boom games for weeks, and ended up being able to solidify himself as a wide receiver 1. Now, let me just say for the future with Jameson Williams that there is some concern, right, about what we know about what Drew Petzing does with the offense. And I think the odd man out personally for me is Jamison Williams because they're going to prioritize Amon-Ra. They're going to prioritize Jahmyr Gibbs. And then to me, what we saw in Arizona was that he prioritized 12 and 13 man sets, making sure that the tight end was one of the highest fed positions on his team. And I do believe that Sam Laporta is going to be, back in the conversation of being, a top 12, top 10 tight end. Now, if you ask me where I want him to be, I would love to see him back to being a top 5 tight end again, but I don't want to get myself too excited about that. Yeah. I think, like I said, I think Jamison Williams is the odd man out there. I really hope not, because this team had a lot of hope for what he could be. And honestly, he is the Gibbs role for the wide receiver side of the offense. I mean, he is so dynamic, and I would hate to see it go to waste and then basically just waste away his contract and just see him, get a third contract somewhere else and, not be anything close to what he was here. Maybe he evolves. I don't know. And then you get Kenyon Sadiq at the 7-4. I'm actually just going to stop there. We'll get to my pick here in a second, but I wanted to talk to you guys about Kenyon Sadiq because he showed out at the combine, and Dustin and I were talking about it pre-show, but the rookies, when you look at 0.75 and full tight end premium, he may rise above the 1.6 and possibly, be taken at something like the 1.5 or 1.4. Austin, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I've already seen a couple mocks with him going 1.5 or 1.4. Depending on, it was a 4-point passing touchdown. Even I think it might have been a 0.5 premium. He went ahead of both Mendoza and Tyson. And then in another draft, he also went above Tyson. So I think it might be a bit of an overreaction. I like Sadiq a lot. I think he's kind of solidified himself as the consensus 106 for me. But it's like, running 40 yards in a straight line doesn't really decide how good a tight end is going to be. We already knew he was fast. His production profile is not great at Oregon. I like him a lot. I think that he's a very solid player if he gets in a good landing spot. I think about maybe like Kansas City or Tampa Bay. Those are two landing spots I've seen him mock that I like. So I think there's a lot of potential. I do think that, so we did this mock a couple weeks ago. If we did this mock today, Sadiq's probably going in the 5th round. I think he's definitely pumped up his value in the last week. And at those prices, I'm not real excited about it. I'd rather have Harold Fandon or Sam Laporta at cost. So I think he was in a spot where I liked his value, but I think he may get a little overhyped to the point where I may not have much Sadiq this year.
Yeah. I mean, even Kyle Pitts at cost, I would take that over Sadiq in the 5th. Yeah. All right. And so speaking of Harold Fannin, he goes 7-5 to Mike Backflips. And then Jalen Waddle at 7-6, RJ Harvey at 7-7. And then I took Travis Etienne at the 7-8. And we had some pretty spirited debate in the Debbie Dojo Discord today talking about Kenneth Walker, who actually we didn't even really bring up his name yet. So that's interesting. But did we bring up Kenneth Walker? Oh, yes, we did. 6-1. Mm-hmm. But Travis Etienne to me is that, basically behind Breece Hall, the next running back as far as free agents, whether he ends up staying in Jacksonville or going somewhere else. And I do think he will be a high priority running back going in, whether he stays with Jacksonville or going into the next offense. And I think taking that at the 7-8, I'm willing to take the risk, especially since I was able to fill in some of the other needed positions earlier in the draft, that I felt okay taking Travis Etienne as my RB2 there. Then you get Baker Mayfield at the 7-9, Javonte Williams, who just signed his extension with the Cowboys at 7-10. Austin, I do want to talk to you about that here in a few picks. Denzel Boston is the next rookie receiver. DK Metcalf at the 7-12. Since we ended the round there, Austin, what are your thoughts on Javonte Williams staying in Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's best case scenario for him. It's everything that his dynasty managers should be asking for. And I think that at this point, I think you're going to see his value go up. You're really, with running backs, to me, you're only playing in 2 to 3 year windows anyway. And so, having a guy that just got a fresh contract, I think he should be considered in that tier more up with the. I don't know. I think he should be up there with Kenneth Walker, Christian McCaffrey, Quinshon Judkins. I think that he's in that same range. The way he performed last year, he's going to be in a great offense. He's going to have a lot of short rushing touchdowns because for some reason George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb love getting tackled to the 1 yard line. I don't really know why it is, but it happens a lot. And so I think that you'll see him thrive. He's not super exciting, right? He makes some big plays, but he's really a solid between the tackles guy. I don't really see Jaden Blue or Phil Maffa, or I don't even know if Miles Sanders will come back, but none of those guys seem like a real threat to his workload. I'm sure they'll have some kind of a change of pace back, whether that's Blue or somebody they add in the draft. But Javonte Williams looks like he's going to be a workhorse in what's going to be a top 10 offense. I think that the defense will be better because I think that they're going to go all in investing in free agency and the draft. So the offense may not have to score quite as much as they did last year, but a lot of times a better defense produces game scripts that are better for running backs. So there could be a opportunity there too. So I love this for Javonte Williams. I'm very happy for the shares that I have and I want to acquire more, but the price is getting to the point where it's like he's getting properly valued. So it's hard to get him. The time to get him was, a month ago.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I think we actually paid a late first to get him in one of the leagues we co-own together, Austin.
Yeah.
Which I think is great value
in season.
Well, what was it though?
I think we played 2 seconds. If I remember,
2 seconds.
That's
right.
It was the 2. It was the 2.
He was asking for a late first, and then we ended up paying 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm feeling me better about that.
Yeah.
So
as you should. As you should. You stole Javonte Williams, is what you did.
This was in season.
We got Austin over there, so
Yeah.
this guy's the smartest guy in the room.
I'm just so happy for Javonte. That's all I'm going to add to that. I'm just so happy for the kid, man. Obviously, Broncos fan. I was very ecstatic when we picked him. The injuries. I'm just very happy for him that everything worked out and that he battled to come back from that injury. At the Devi Dojo, we always talk about what you go through molds you, and it's just really shaped him into the athlete and the player that he is today. And I couldn't be happier for him. So,
young first couple years, Javonte Williams in Denver, man, he was something special. I don't think we'll see that level again, but the fact that he's turned into having a nice NFL career, I think is really cool to see. I'm glad he didn't go the way of a lot of those running backs to get hurt.
Yeah,
that's a big one could have been.
Unfortunately, that's what you see when you have an Achilles tear. Is just they lose that juice. So he's still going to be an extremely really good running back, but like you guys said, he won't be that explosive back that he was those first couple of years in Denver, that rookie year in Denver. You get Aronde Gadsden at the 8-1, Christian Watson 8-2, Cortland Sutton 8-3, Sam Laporta at the 8-4. I took Michael Wilson as my wide receiver 3, and I feel pretty solid about that. Even considering, the situation that the Cardinals are entering into with, kind of nebulous QB situation. Of course, Marvin Harrison is still expected to be the wide receiver 1 in that offense in terms of they spent a fourth overall pick on him. They got to give him the ability to be able to be successful there. But Michael Wilson was performing like a wide receiver 1 in that offense last year. It'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward, especially if they end up getting a free agent like Malik Willis or, I don't know that they draft somebody, but I think they will definitely get a vet and then possibly wait next year for the draft. We get Wan'Dale Robinson at the 8-6, Derrick Henry at the 8-7, Sam Darnold at 8-8, Jacoby Myers at the 8-9, and then Austin, you took Jordan Addison at the 8-10.
Yeah, Jordan Addison to me is a guy that's much more talented than the box scores he put up last year. The Minnesota offense was an absolute wreck, largely due to J.J. McCarthy, if I'm just being honest. He just had a really rough season. Even Justin Jefferson was not performing. T.J. Hawkinson fell off the map. But I think everybody's overreacting a little bit, thinking that J.J. McCarthy is automatically going to be the quarterback there for the next decade. don't think that is the case.
Yeah.
We've already
Maybe
heard
we should talk a little bit about this.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we were talking about Justin Jefferson.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
basically,
that's
we
amazing.
said, the leash on JJ McCarthy is fairly short.
Yeah.
I think they give him probably another year or two to get this thing right. And if not, I mean, they basically already kind of made their bed with losing Sam Darnold. And,
Right. And to me, as
right.
when you're talking about the weapons, so you're talking about Jefferson or Hawkinson or Addison, it's a win-win. Either JJ McCarthy figures it out and then he's fine, or you're getting somebody else. So I do think, I mean, it's right to be cautious. I think all of their values have gone down somewhat. But Addison and especially TJ Hawkinson, I mean, I've been talking about this in the Discord, like the fact that he went from a guy that was going like in the 5th round of startups last year to like you can get him with Dalton Schultz in the 15th or something is crazy to me. He's still very talented. Where did he go in this draft?
I don't think he went.
But yeah, exactly. So he's still very talented. And I think that if you saw, I was saying this, I was like, if they signed Kirk Cousins as a backup and then he ended up getting starts, I think you'd see Hawkinson start putting up top 10 numbers again. I think it's just he just needs that volume. He got used a lot as a blocker last year. They were running the ball a ton because McCarthy was really struggling. So and then they were bringing in, they had Max Brosmer starting games. I mean, it's like it was a mess. We've seen him play really well with just competent, like barely competent quarterback play from Kirk Cousins, and even Sam Darnold was up and down, but was giving Hawkinson great numbers and Addison good numbers. So Addison's still a young guy, very explosive. We even saw flashes. I think it was in week 17. He had an end-around touchdown run with a dive to the pylon that was like, it was pretty awesome to see. But in classic Minnesota Vikings fashion, he had no catches in that game and 1 rush for 50 yards and a touchdown. So it's just one of those things where it's like, if you get the man the ball, he makes things happen. And so whether JJ McCarthy takes big steps forward or they move on from JJ McCarthy, I think that we're going to be looking at Jordan Addison. He's not going anywhere, right? He's going to be a solid asset. So he's still young. We've seen him put up, I believe, top 15 numbers, at least top 20 numbers. So he's been a solid wide receiver too. So at this point, I'm just taking shots on upside guys. So I like him.
Yeah. No, and I don't hate that for you, Austin. I think one thing for me is that, especially during the like a month or two ago when Jordan Addison was being involved in an investigation that ended up getting dropped. But there were some rumors about the Vikings, possibly wanting to trade him at some point. And I don't, it's interesting to think about where he could end up, that maybe his situation could be much better where he could be a wide receiver 1. Let's see here. So we have Jadarian Price going at the 8-11, and then Dustin at the turn, you took Emmett Johnson and Kyler Murray. Let's talk a little bit about Emmett Johnson since, I think, again, everybody's kind of fresh off of watching the NFL Combine. And to me, Emmett Johnson, people were worried about the 40. They see the 4.57 and they get scared off at the fact that, they're like, oh, he's much slower than what we thought. And, I know your thoughts on this, but kind of talk to us a little bit about why maybe you are or you're not worried.
I mean, it's double counting again based on the combine numbers, right? We already knew that he didn't have elite long speed. That was never part of his game. He wins with his elusiveness and the ability to make a defender miss that way. He's still going to get you those chunk gains. So, I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about that. I think part of what played a factor into my decision here was I just saw Jadarian Price go. And of course, we had been having the debates: who's the running back 2 of the class? Is it Price? Is it Johnson? Is it Jonah Coleman? Is it this guy? And this was another kind of flag plant moment for me as a guy who we both have declared as our running back 2 of the class. And I just felt like this was a good range to kind of take him. A lot of people were passing on rookies, and I see these guys as having the ability to. Okay, let me back up here. When I'm picking in this range, I'm looking at guys who I think have the potential to have the biggest rise in value. And for me, that was along the lines of this Emmett Johnson right here. I still see him as like probably the last pick of the first round in your rookie drafts. And I looked around and I said, would I be comfortable trading a first for any of these players, or would I move off of these players for a first? Yeah. So I took him, and then it filled a need on my roster. Again, we don't have to have our lineup set at the end of this draft, but I am looking at that like, okay, I need another running back. I took Josh Jacobs earlier. Now I could supplement it with a younger back who has potential. Maybe he's not going to get a defining role immediately, but projecting forward, I really liked that. And then I came back around and got me another quarterback, my QB3 now, Kyler Murray, who I think, again, he's going to be a starter in this league. When he does start, he's a very good fantasy quarterback when he's starting, given his rushing utility and everything that he can still provide as a passer. We don't know where he's going to be at this point. I think we can pretty confidently and definitively say it's not going to be with Arizona. But wherever he goes, I still believe in that talent, at least for fantasy. I think that getting him here in this range, what is this, the 9th round or the 10th round? I can't see the screen small. There at the end of the 9th, it's, okay, at the beginning of the 9th. I just liked the value there. And again, that's kind of been the theme of this draft, is the ability to get these quarterbacks late. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on Kyler Murray? Because it's pretty mixed out there in the community right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. He's going to be a starter next year. And it wasn't too long ago. Let me pull up the stats here because, Austin and I talked about Kyler Murray last offseason in a Gambit episode where it was only a few seasons ago where, he was the QB 10 in 2024. And, you look back, of course, beginning of his career, QB 6, QB 3, QB 10, and then he kind of had this fall off with the injury and ended up coming back to be the QB 10. And this last year, again, it's just marred by injury. So we know he has the upside to be a QB 1, and he was a very, big prospect coming out of Oklahoma, first overall pick to the Cardinals. I think this is a value at the 9-1, right? Because what other QBs are you comparing him to? Matt Stafford, who, he's going to be a good start for you for the next year or so. But Kyler Murray's a little bit younger. And again, he's getting a starting spot. Sam Darnold, who, he went a half round earlier. And then you have Daniel Jones, who tore his Achilles at the end of last year. So I think it's a pretty good value where you got him at. I don't think he would have fallen much further.
Yeah, Kyler Murray, I think there's questions. I think it's not about the statistical performance. It's more about kind of the decision making. How focused is he? I know the Cardinals have been frustrated by that. I'm not in that not in that facility, so I can't speak to that, but it seems like that's been the ongoing thing with him. But to me, when he's on the football field, when he's healthy, he has never, I believe this is correct, he has never had a fully healthy season where he didn't finish as a top 10 fantasy quarterback. So to me, it's like this is a guy that's clearly a top 32 quarterback in the league. To me, I think he's probably borderline top 15, at least top 20. So he's going to get a starting job. You can't tell me that the Jets would rather roll out Brady Cook or Justin Fields again, or there's so many different options. If Aaron Rodgers retires, are the Steelers really going to do Will Howard? It's not like we have a stacked draft class either. Like there are so many different places that Kyler Murray could go. He's going to be a starting quarterback. So I like it at 9-1. He's on the field, he's starting, and he's healthy. He performs. And honestly, it's similar to Justin Fields, where it's all about, is a team going to buy into him? Because to me, I still think if a team is actually willing to start Justin Fields for the whole season, if I could know that Justin Fields was going to get 17 starts next year, I think he's a top 15 fantasy quarterback. The problem is he's probably outworn his welcome and will never start again. Whereas Kyler Murray, I think he's going to get another chance.
Yeah, and what in the range of outcomes is this, like a Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold situation where he goes to a different environment? The likelihood, though, is if it's the Jets, it's not right. It's likely not going to work out.
Right, but it could not work out from an NFL perspective and still be a top fantasy performance. Yeah,
right. But what if it does work out, and then we're talking about like he lands a contract and like the Jets were looking. Let's just say it's the Jets and somehow it works out. The Jets were hoping that they were going to get a top pick in 2027. And instead, they end up finding fantasy gold and football gold in Kyler Murray, and ends up having a turnaround of his career. Who knows? Crazier things have happened. Sure. I think it's really interesting, again, when you have these 9th and 10th round picks, you're shooting for upside. And so I like the pick there from that standpoint. And then you end up taking, we end up getting Devontae Adams taken at 9-2. And then Austin, you took Ricky Pearsall at 9-3. I mean, I think that was a pretty smart pick again as your wide receiver 3. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I love Ricky Pearsall. He's one of my favorite buys of the offseason. He's another guy that when he's been on the field, he's produced. They drafted him in the first round. I think people kind of forget that. He is a first-round wide receiver talent on a great offense that's about to have no weapons. I mean, Brandon Ayuk is gone. George Kittle likely is missing a chunk of the season. Juwan Jennings is a potential free agent. I mean, there is a scenario where Ricky Pearsall is the clear wide receiver 1 on one of the best offenses in the NFL, and I'm getting him here in the 9th round. I think there's concerns with the repeated injury history and some inconsistency. He was a little older for a rookie 2 years ago, like coming out. So there's some concerns, but to me at this point, I'm shooting for upside. And I think that he's a guy that I think you can get really cheap right now. So I buy him for really anywhere in the second. I think Dustin hit on something good when you're looking at comparing, whether you draft rookies or veterans at this point in the draft. I think it is a good spot. Like, would I trade this guy for a late first or an early second? And that's kind of a good deciding factor on whether he's a guy worth taking there or whether you should take a rookie. So I thought that was a good point you pointed out there. And that's kind of part of my thought process with Pearsall is we've had 12 or 13 rookies go. So we're talking early to mid second. And I would definitely trade a single second for Pearsall right now.
Yeah, pretty easily for me. I'm right there with you. We've seen Ricky Pearsall when healthy. He's pretty productive out there. Him and Purdy seem to have a really good connection. So, I mean, if in that scenario where they are out of weapons and it's a depleted room now, he's the most veteran wide receiver in that room and in that system now. I mean, that's a very, very realistic scenario. I think they would likely draft another guy, but that veteran experience in the system definitely would play a factor.
Definitely, guys. And I think we've kind of gotten through, some of the really like top assets as far as like really talking in depth about some of these guys. So we're gonna kind of like go through these a little bit faster and give some of our process at the end of each round. But yeah, so you end up getting Matt Stafford taken at 9-4, Travis Hunter at 9-5, Nick Singleton at 9-6. Daniel Jones at 9-7, and then I took Kyle Monangai at 9-8 to get my RB3. We get Terry McLaurin at 9-9, DeAndre Swift at 9-10, Kyle Monangai's backfield mate, Skylar Bell at 9-11, Malik Willis at 9-12 for Jose's QB2. Again, that'll be really interesting to see where he ends up in the offseason and where he gets that contract. Eli Stowers at 10-1. Quentin Johnston at 10-2, Michael Pittman at 10-3, Jaden Higgins at 10-4, and I decided to take my QB3 and Bryce Young at 10-5. I'll just quickly say that I think, for that pick, I thought it was pretty big value considering, Bryce Young to me is probably in the top 20 dynasty QBs. And, I think he can put up good weeks. We saw him have good, games where he was fighting in the fourth quarter and you look here at the stats, he was, let's see, basically a QB 19 on the year, right? I think he had a little bit of a bigger ending of the season. You saw the 31-point game against Atlanta there. He ended up having quite a few double-digit games as a quarterback, and especially at my quarterback 3 in the 10th round. I'm going to take the shot on a young guy who was selected 1 overall. Really fought well in the Rams game, the divisional playoff. But yeah, Zach Charbonnet goes to the 10-6, coming back from the ACL. Alec Pierce at 10-7, Parker Washington at 10-8, Woody Marks at 10-9, and then Austin, you took DJ Moore at 10-10. Any quick thoughts on that pick?
Yeah, it's not sexy, but he's a solid. We had a top 30 wide receiver again, and just another body to get in there. He'll have some big games, has some upside. I mean, we've seen him have a top 10 finish before. So again, I'm just filling up that wide receiver room with, bodies that'll give me 10 to 12 points in my flex spots, and I don't have to, I don't have to have them carry my team because my quarterbacks, running backs, and tight ends are pretty strong.
Yeah. Oh, and I think you ended up getting more depth at wide receiver for sure. Whereas like it wasn't as strong of a wide receiver room, but to have DJ Moore as your wide receiver 4, probably in your flex spot, that looks pretty good there. Elijah Surratt goes at the 10-11. And then Dustin, you took Omar Cooper and Dalton Kincaid at the 10-12 and then the 11-1. Any quick thoughts on Omar Cooper and Dalton Kincaid?
I just felt like I went with the better rookie wide receiver right there again after the turn. After that spot, I said I'd rather go with Omar Cooper. I just believe in him more as a prospect, his alignment versatility. We have some questions about his route running. I don't need to get into all that. I just again felt like it was a good potential rise in value with these rookies. Of course, we did this a couple weeks back. I think now you would start to see some of these guys go a little higher after combine performances, and as people are really starting to now delve into rookies. Whereas I had the rookie fever a couple months ago, so I think that kind of played a factor. But then I circled back with Dalton Kincaid there after taking Colston Loveland early. I felt like I took my high end tight end early, and now I'm supplementing it with a guy who's still pretty young and in an offense that's going to feature him in those heavier personnel packages. I mean, we saw in the playoffs how he was starting to function now that he was healthy. Apparently he was playing with this nagging injury all season. I still believe in the talent of Kincaid. I think he's burned a lot of managers, and that's why you see his fall now. So I mean, taking him here at 11-1, I was all for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be fine next season. Yeah. I mean, he's going to be the de facto tight end 1 in Buffalo again next year. And I think he admittedly was playing through an injury, a partially torn PCL. And so I do think he's going to come back and be just fine next year for Buffalo. And to be able to get, I believe, that was your tight end too. I think that's solid there, Dustin. We get Brenton Strange at 11-2. And actually, I'm going to touch a little bit on Omar Cooper too, because we were talking to Austin earlier about how you take any random second for Ricky Pearsall. I think some of the rookies that you're about to see go here, including Eli Stowers, those are guys that I would easily take in these rounds, because to me, those guys are worth late firsts. So
0.75, I think Eli Stowers should be going 107 or 108. But yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, this was before the combine and everything else like that. Mm-hmm. So I think these rookies were definitely getting into the point of like great values.
Yeah.
You end up seeing Brenton Strange go 11-2, Khalil Shakir at 11-3. I like that again for you, Austin. Wide receiver 5 on your team, slotting likely into your second flex spot. Any quick thoughts on Khalil Shakir and his future in Buffalo?
Yeah, I think he's just super underrated. Again, it's like I have a couple high upside guys, and now you just kind of get a boring. He's just going to score 13 points every single week and just be solid there. It's just what he is. But I definitely think people, overlook him. I did a blind comparison in our Discord last year between him and Zay Flowers, and it's amazing how similar the two of them are. But Zay Flowers consistently goes 5 or 6 rounds higher. So.
No, I mean, he's been a consistent producer in Buffalo for sure. And honestly, I think the argument is there for him over Zay Flowers or vice versa. Jalen Warren goes at 11-4, Jalen Coker at 11-5, Chris Bell at 11-6, Xavier Worthy at 11-7, and I took Jake Ferguson at 11-8, giving the Cowboys some love there. I think he is still just going to be the solid starter that we know in Dallas. As part of that trio between Pickens, CD, and him. Then we get Jawan Jennings at 11-9, Rico Dowdle at 11-10. We get Blake Corum at 11-11, Chris Brazel at 11-12, Mike Washington, one of Dustin's right now, not Debbie darling, but definitely a rookie draft darling right now. Damon Claiborne at 12-2, Mark Andrews at 12-3, Matthew Golden at 12-4, Michael Penix at 12-5, Ramondre Stevenson at 12-6, George Kittle at 12-7, Brandon Ayuk at 12-8, We got Tootin at 12-9. And then Austin, you took Mike Evans at 12-10. And I think this is a really interesting spot because now we know a little bit more about his situation, that he is going to be a free agent and will be available in the next week or so. What were your thoughts taking that pick with Mike Evans there? And then, of course, you backed it up with Chris Godwin in the 13th.
Yeah, so I think it's just one of those things where it's like Mike Evans is, when he's playing, he's a top 15 wide receiver. That's just what he is. I mean, even last year, he was really struggled with injuries, but man, he looked really good in the games he played. And to me, the only question mark was he going to retire? And now that we know he's not going to, I think he comes back to Tampa. I honestly think that's what's going to end up happening. But even if he goes somewhere else, I think we could see him have, similar to Stephon Diggs last year, go somewhere and put up good numbers. I mean, he's my wide receiver 5. We're in the 12th round. I think it's good value. I do want to give Rocco a shout out here because I think George Kittle at 12.7 and a 0.75 tight end premium is just absurd. I actually had Kittle at the top of my queue for 3 rounds, but I draft George Kittle in like every draft ever, so I decided not to do it this time. So 12.7 is just insane. If he misses 4 weeks and comes back, I mean, he's going to be – I mean, I just can't believe how far he's fallen. Like, it's kind of crazy to me that people are like completely out on George Kittle like his career is over. I mean, this man – he'd run through a brick wall to continue playing football. We're going to have 3 or 4 top 5 George Kittle seasons still before his career is done.
Yeah, it's not unforeseen that, with his injury and the new advancements in medical technology, that he is back at the beginning of next season. Like, we saw Aaron Rodgers do it. Now Aaron Rodgers plays a different role, and the fact that he doesn't have to move around as much at the quarterback position. But I think, where we could see the timeline going is George Kittle is back for week 1. And if people are selling him, I mean, I think it was understandable to feel panicked probably a month ago and start selling him for seconds, but that could turn around and bite you in the butt if he starts week 1. We get Terrence Ferguson at 12-11, and then Dustin, you end up taking J.K. Dobbins and Michael Trigg back-to-back, 12-12 and 13-1. Any quick comments on that?
Right now, I'm just looking for value right now, and J.K. Dobbins, when he was healthy, was very, very productive. Kind of along my same thoughts of when I took my running backs earlier, and Josh Jacobs. Productive struggle. I could still take an aging running back, maybe flip him later, or if I'm surprisingly competing in this spot, he's a running back that I could slot in there as a starter. I don't know if he's going to be with Denver. I anticipate that he will be, but Denver's also looking at other running backs to go with RJ Harvey. So wherever he goes, I'm confident that he's going to be a high-end starter because that's how he's always been when he has been healthy. So I felt like taking him here at the end of the 12th was great range. Followed it up with Michael Trigg, who I've been really high on. I'm a little lower now after watching some of the other guys, but still really like the talent of all the tight ends in this draft class. He had the highest ADOT. He had the most depth of targets, like consistently was getting his targets 20 plus yards down the field. And that's just who he is because he's more of a muscle power slot wide receiver than he is a traditional tight end. So I felt like getting that type of talent here late was just another good value stab. And that's really been my strategy here, picking from the 12 spot, this entire range.
Yeah, no, I think you've done really well at drafting the productive struggle that you're talking about. And it'll be interesting to see where J.K. Dobbins ends up because I don't think he's going to spend another season in Denver. I think they probably part ways. We get Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt at 13-2. Austin, you took Chris Godwin at 13-3. Any quick comments on that?
Well, at this time last year, we were famously debating whether Godwin was worth a 27 first. And I didn't think he was at the time, but the fact that was even a conversation, and he's basically the exact same player. I don't see any reason why, if you liked Chris Godwin last year when he was coming off of a brutal injury, why you wouldn't be excited about him this year. He looked like he was regaining his form towards the end of the year. Baker Mayfield loves him. If Mike Evans is gone, there's going to be an opportunity for a significant bounce back. And it's just one of those. It's another guy that we've seen perform well. I believe he's finished as high as like wide receiver 3, I think is his best season.
Wide receiver 2, actually.
Wide receiver
I
2.
believe
So
it's like 2019.
yeah, so we've seen, and then we saw him, last year, not last year, but the year before he got hurt, he was performing as a top 5 receiver as well. So there's, we've seen him have a high ceiling. So again, this is just another body in there, another opportunity, and kind of a hedging of the Mike Evans bet. If they're both there, maybe they hurt each other a little bit, and it'll be a tough lineup call week to week. But I just think that it's just, I actually really like how it turned out. I mean, and then I get Diggs in the next round, but like having Jameson Williams, Jordan Addison, Ricky Pearsall, DJ Moore, Khalil Shakur, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Stephon Diggs. Between those guys, there'll be 3 to 5 of them that I can solidly put in my lineup every week. So I really like how my
100%.
draft ended up.
100%. And that goes to show too, like, again, if it's start 3 wide receiver, if you don't draft a wide receiver in the first 5 rounds, it doesn't mean you're dead. It just means you need to be able to really hit the values towards the back half of the draft.
And I'd argue that's the only position you can really do that, because running back dries up very quick, quarterback dries up very quick, and then tight end depending on the draft. But yeah,
tight end's just so scarce.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unfortunately the issue there. JJ McCarthy goes at the 13-4. Tyler Algier, which that'll be, again, another interesting free agent situation happening there at the 13-5. 13-6, Chuba Hubbard. Zachariah Branch. Dustin, I'm not going to have you go off on your hate on this man, this former USC wide receiver. Katron Allen at the 13-8. Ty Simpson at the 13-8, 13-8, Jesus. No, he is 13-9. My guy. All right. That is my guy. We're just going to move on from there. But Tua Tagovailoa at the 13-10. Trey Benson at the 13-11. Shedeur Sanders at the 13-12. Tajay Spears at 14-1. Theo Johnson at 14-2. David Montgomery, rest in peace from my Detroit Lions. Mason Taylor. And then I ended up taking Jaden Reed. So we'll talk about the Katron Allen pick at the 13-8. Again, just like Dustin's been talking about, taking the value and guys who can rise. I think Katron Allen, now it opens up a situation where he can come to Detroit as the RB2. But I think he's going to slot in as a nice power back as part of a rotation in an offense. And right now, again, when you're comparing, would I take Chuba Hubbard or would I take a mid to late 2? I'm honestly probably taking the mid to late 2 and taking a shot on a running back like Katron Allen or, later on in the round, Trey Benson. So we got Jaden Reed, like I said, took him at 4 or 5. I think as far as the Green Bay Packers offense goes, to me, I think Christian Watson is probably the highest value wide receiver right now on the team, but that could always change in that offense. Jaden Reed has shown when he's on the field, he can be a Debo light. It's just he's a yak machine. A couple of years ago, he's put up basically low end wide receiver 2 numbers, and getting him here at the 14th round, I'm feeling pretty good about that. You get Jacoby Lane at the 14-6, Jawan Johnson 14-7, Romeo Dobbs 14-8. Jalen McMillan at 14-9. And as you alluded to earlier, Austin, you took Stephon Diggs at the 14-10.
Yeah, just, again, there's not too much of a deep strategy to it. It's just another guy that puts up points. I have enough young guys that I can afford to do some of these bets. So similar bet as Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, guy we've seen put up numbers. Should probably be a good bet again next year to put up numbers, assuming he's not incarcerated.
We get Alvin Kamara at the 14-11, Pat Bryant at 14-12, to Dustin and Kayshon Boutte at the 15-1. I think, the difference between Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte is probably right on there. They're only a few picks apart. You've got a younger guy who has at times shown that he can be productive in Kayshon Boutte, but at the same time, Stephon Diggs is that solid vet that, if he's going as your wide receiver 7, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Anthony Richardson at 15-2, Tony Pollard 15-3. I believe that might have been an auto at 15-4, Brad Miller. Jonathan Brooks at 15-5, Kenneth Gainwell at 15-6, Dallas Goedert at 15-7. I took some upside with Troy Franklin at 15-8. Isaiah Likely at 15.9, Jeremy Bernard at 15.10 out of Alabama. I think that's a value there.
Yeah.
Tyrone Tracy at 15.11, and then Braylon Allen to end off the draft at 15.12. And the first thing I have to ask, Austin, I really started to notice this at the end of the draft. Is probably why you guys saw me scrolling up and down for a second there. You took no rookies in this draft. And I'm just curious. I mean, it probably is just because the vets that were there made a lot of sense. Did you have any rationale towards, no, never mind. No, you took all vets. Any rationale behind that, or was that just kind of the way that the board fell?
To be honest, it just was kind of like each time on the clock, there was somebody I liked better than any of the rookies. I think that there was a couple times, like when I picked DJ Moore, I actually was thinking about like Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper. I actually really like Chris Bell, but I felt like I needed, just with the way my team was built, I needed kind of more of a safe option at wide receiver. I still feel like my team, the core of my team, is still pretty young. Like I have Travion Henderson and Bucky Irving, Tyler Warren, Jameson Williams, and Jordan Addison. So I just because I don't have rookies, I think doesn't mean necessarily that I'm like an all-in veteran team. I do tend to think that a lot of times in these startups in the offseason, now I think this draft was pretty good, pretty fairly valued throughout. But I think we see a lot of startups where the rookies go higher than they should because people are in rookie fever. So I think it's just kind of how it fell. There wasn't like an intentional, I'm not going to draft any rookies, but
yeah, no, that's fair. I think that makes, like you said, your build makes a lot of sense towards wanting to make sure that, especially with the deficiency at wide receiver, not taking one early, that you wanted to make sure you built the depth with proven assets. And then, as far as to talk about each of our teams, I'll go over my team first. JSN, first round, wanted to get that wide receiver 1. Trey McBride as my tight end 1 in the second round. Bo Nix, the third round. Ladd McConkey, my wide receiver 2 in the fourth round. And again, I think Ladd McConkey is going to be a value when he's hitting the fourth round, considering he was a mid-third round guy last year in startups. Quinshon Judkins is my running back 1 in the fifth round. Jordan Love, Travis Etienne, Michael Wilson, Kyle Monangai, Bryce Young, Jake Ferguson, Michael Penix, Katron Allen, Jaden Reed, and Troy Franklin. And then, as far as your guys' drafts, Austin, you took the 3 QBs early, 2 running backs. Tyler Warren was a great value for you there. And then we talked about the 7 wide receivers right there towards the end of the draft, and then finishing it off with Tony Pollard, which Tony Pollard's not going to be done by any means. He's going to be another part of a committee, whether it's with Tennessee or somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then Dustin, I think we talked about it a lot earlier, your productive struggle that you're building here, building for the future. Caleb Williams in the first round, Jeremiah love that pick in the second round. Of course, you stick around with more Love, going Loveland, Brian Thomas, Cam Ward, Casey Concepcion is where you take your second rookie. Jacobs, Emmett Johnson, Kyler Murray, Omar Cooper, another rookie for you there. Kincaid, Dobbins, Michael Trigg, Pat Bryant, and Booty. I think it was a really well-balanced draft. Is there anybody that stands out to you guys as having, a pretty well-balanced team, or do you like anybody's specific drafts or the build that they went for?
I mean, I think Rocco drafted well. I mean, I look at Drake May and Justin Herbert, I think is a solid quarterback room. And then you had Jefferson, Brown, Burden, Waddle. And then actually I thought Derrick Henry was a great value. George Kittle was a great value. Jawan Johnson. I mean, that's a guy that consistently put up good numbers last year in the 0.75. That's like he could be averaging 14 points a game in this format. So I actually think his team top to bottom is very solid. That's a team that stood out to me as consistently getting good value.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at it, again, we kind of took Jose's draft and talked about his quarterbacks, but I think as far as what he did with the other positions, I really like, as far as Bijan at the 101, George Pickens, Chris Olave, and Carnell Tate as his 3 wide receivers, and then getting Kenneth Walker at his RB2 in the 6th round. He ends up going his wide receiver 4 in DK Metcalf. he's going to figure out the quarterback situation. I mean, who knows? Tyler Shuck ends up working out just fine, and Malik Willis gets signed somewhere where he ends up being a top 24 QB.
Mm-hmm.
Eli Stowers, I think, is a huge value there for him. I think, to me, Kenyon Sadiq is going to get the draft cap in the first round, like pretty solidly that we know about. Eli Stowers could be in the first round as well. And even if he's not, I think he's going to be the better value in rookie drafts going in the late first. I think it's hard at this point to see him going in the early second round now still in tight end premium rookie drafts, but I think he's still going to be a good value. You got Cress Brazel, Mike Washington. Again, Dustin, you can talk about your rookie darling there if you'd like. Shedeur Sanders, Tajay Spears, and Braylon Allen. But any other thoughts, guys?
It was a fun exercise. Did some things I don't normally do. I do think one more thing on Patrick Mahomes. I think a lot of the reason why people are shying away is because people think in such a narrow view of like, okay, Mahomes may not be ready to start the year. But with my team, actually, I'm perfectly fine to hold him and, plug a lineup in and have Mahomes on my bench while he heals. And then as soon as his value goes up, I can look to trade one of the quarterbacks. So I think that's something else to keep in mind is how rare is it that you actually get the luxury of Mahomes being your QB3. So that kind of mitigates a lot of the risk associated with Mahomes. So that's just something I thought of.
True. No, 100%. But yeah, no, I thought this draft was a fun exercise, guys. Loved having you on, Dustin. Of course, Dustin, we can find you with the Debbie Dojo. Any parting thoughts about any projects that you and Chris are working on going forward?
We are going to start hitting Devi pretty hard now. Again, we have our guest Corey P from Back to Devi podcast coming up, and then of course just the rookie profiles for now, which you mentioned at the top, does drop the first edition March 9th. So it's coming up here pretty soon. And actually right after this, I got to knock out some more profiles, some of these last minute guys. So if you want to check out our work that we're doing at the Devi Dojo, the best place to find it is on my link tree on Twitter, which is at Empire Elite FF. Again, click on the link tree and you got everything that we're working on there.
Yeah, good stuff. It's good to have you back on, Ben. I know that you're going to be wanting to come on from time to time, which we're definitely grateful for, and obviously good to have you again, Dustin. So thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for bearing with me through the technical difficulties at the beginning of the episode, but I'm glad that I was able to hop on for the majority of it. So appreciate you guys.
A lot of fun.
Appreciate you guys, and looking forward to some more good content coming up. And I hope you guys enjoy this one and have a good rookie fever season, because I'm sure that it'll get kind of crazy over this next month or two. So it is an exciting time with Dynasty. We get there is no off season. So, well, thanks for joining us, guys, and take care.